Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name is Rory Paquette, and I know you know that. But folks, I just love to remind myself on a regular basis, especially when I'm sitting behind this mic, how grateful I am to be sitting here living my best life and being able to speak to all of you. I can't sit here and do what I'm doing, the thing that I love doing every day of my life, if you're not out there doing what you're doing. And I just want you to know how grateful I am, folks. If you're not out there liking, sharing, subscribing, sending DMs, and the whole bit, then we don't get to be here. So thank you, folks. Without any further ado, if you're a friend of the program, you know what's coming next. We got to pay some bills, and we need to take a sip of our preferred beverage. So let me get some of this. Oh my gosh, man, it gets better every time. Especially this, it's evening right now, and I'm like one of the only guys I know who drinks coffee 24/7. But when it's this good, you got to do what you got to do. And that's right, it's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They brew a mean bean. It's an absolutely fantastic cup of joe, folks. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, including supporting veterans. And you all know how important veterans are here at the Power Man Podcast. If you're a veteran out there, I want to thank you and your family for the sacrifices that you made. And I want you to know that you have a home here, and we love you. Folks, so does Freedom Hill Coffee. So Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out, and tell them Power of Man sent you. Now, before I get going with this young buck who's sitting across the table from me, I need to get one more sip of this, liquid gold. Hold on a sec. Okay. All right. I think I'm ready. Here we go. I think I'm ready to go, guys. All right. So, gentlemen, we have a really cool guest with us today. I mean, this guy's tailor-made for the podcast, and I'm really glad that we were able to connect. This gentleman is the founder of Manhood Tribes. I mean, right? Does that fit our show or what? He's the author of the best-selling book, How to Be a Man. He's 20 plus years as a pastor and a men's leader, helping men build life-changing masculine community. This gentleman has a free offer for you on top of everything else. Folks, please welcome to the show, Don Ross. Don, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great, Roy. Man, I'm excited to be here. I really appreciate you having me on the show and really looking forward to being able to talk with the men in your audience.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. And I'm really glad that we connected. Now I've given them kind of an idea. I've set the table for you. All right. You talk about the stuff that we talk about all the time. So you are in the friendly confines of the Power of Man,
Great.
podcast
I'm at
now.
home.
I can't wait to hear where all of this came from, but let's kind of start at the beginning. Who is Don Ross? What led you to all of this, brother?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll give the long but not too long version. How about that?
Okay.
So I started into a ministry career pretty much right out of college, but never intended to do that. I actually planned on being a doctor and went to college for pre-med and, did all of those things that I was planning on, all that I needed to do to be able to get into med school and was on track for that. And Jesus just kind of interrupted my life in college. I had been a believer for since I was probably a teenager, but in college, I kind of had tunnel vision towards what I was going to do to be able to be a doctor. And when I finally kind of was able to come up for air and say, okay, I think I've ticked most of the boxes here to be able to get into med school, I actually started asking myself, do I really want to go to med school? Like, is that really what the plan is? And the Lord really kind of confronted me at one point, and what I began to realize was that while this plan of being a doctor was a good plan and maybe even a godly plan, it actually was just my plan. It was, here's how I think I can glorify the Lord. Here's ways that I can be able to use the gifts that I have and do something really good with it in the world. None of those things are bad, but it was kind of all about me. It was really focused on me and who I wanted to be and the ways that I was going to be successful and all that kind of stuff. And I was actually at a Christian retreat in college over Christmas, and I heard a speaker say, God will never call you to do something that you're capable of doing on your own. It was a really
Uh,
profound statement that changed not only the course of my life from that point, but has really been something that I've come back to time and time again to just remind me that the point of our life as followers of God is to be united with Him, that we are meant to do life with Him. And anytime that we are trying to do things on our own, we're probably getting into danger territory, right? It's just not how we're meant to operate. But that was how I was operating pretty much my whole life up to that point. So I did. I made a drastic change and decided that I was going to go into ministry. That was a radical life change, but a really good one. And so I was actually a missionary for a while. I worked with a college ministry for a few years, and then got into church ministry after that. And pretty much everywhere that I went, I kind of found myself gravitating towards working with men, whether that was my job or not. Or, obviously as a male ministry leader or as a pastor, that was going to happen anyway. But I found myself really wanting to invest in men's ministry, doing things with men, trying to gather and connect men. And there just weren't a lot of other pastors that seemed as interested in that as I was. There was a lot of, interest and emphasis on weekend services and being a great teacher or in pastoral care kind of stuff. And those things are great. We need pastors that do all of those things well, but those were never the things that I was really as drawn to. And, I saw that in every ministry setting that I was in, it felt like churches and ministries were really struggling to reach and connect men. And I just really began to think, I don't really understand why this is. Most of our ministry leaders are men. Why is it that we have such a hard time being able to actually connect with our own? What's the deal here?
Yeah.
And so I just really kind of began to develop a heart for saying, I think that we as the church, as the body of Christ, especially in America, really probably need to own our flaws here and figure out what is it that we're not doing right and how could we do a better job of being able to reach and connect with men. And so that's what I've been kind of working on most of my ministry career. It kind of came to a head about 4 years ago. After I had been working on, I had been a small groups pastor for a while, and I had really kind of developed some of the model for what I now call a tribe, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But I had seen some of this stuff go well, but was also just sort of feeling from the Lord like, hey, this is not just something for you to do within the context of your local church. This is something that men need in a lot of places. And so I made the decision to actually step out of pastoral ministry. And I jumped into digital marketing of all things. So for the past 4 years, I have been doing digital marketing full time as a way to help me kind of learn a skill set that could be involved in doing some of the stuff we're doing right now. How do you reach men through the digital world and be able to help them connect locally with each other, but how to be able to connect with guys wherever they're at and help them be able to do some of the things that I know we need help doing. So that's kind of been my focus. And that's when I really kind of launched this whole thing of Manhood Tribes. That's when I started working on a book. And yeah, it's been a cool journey ever since then of trying to figure out what does it look like to help and to serve men in a broader context at this point.
That's amazing. That really is. Okay, now you brought this up, so I'm going to go ahead and circle back on it like right away.
Yeah.
You brought up the concept of a tribe, and
Yeah.
people hear this all the time. You
Right.
got to have a tribe. You got to find your tribe. You got
Right.
to people are tribal. In terms of what you're talking about, though, what does a tribe, especially for men, really
Yeah.
mean to you?
Yeah. So when I talk about a tribe, I have a few kind of specific things in mind, and I call them the three pillars of tribe. They are manhood, camaraderie, and freedom. And so I'll unpack those things a little bit for you, but they're not hard to understand. In our world at the moment, I put manhood at the top of the list because we as a culture are just really struggling with what does it mean to be a man. I wrote this book, How to Be a Man,
Right.
because I think we have a hard time with that definition. We've kind of lost our anchor points for what masculinity and manhood look like, are really all about, how to do it well, what roles do we play, what actions do we take in society, how do we interact with each other as men, I think is in particular a big one. And so, I just tried to say, like, I think we need some, if not definition, we just need some direction around this concept of manhood. We need kind of some clear ideas of what are we talking about here. So I tried to make it just as simple as possible. I came up with what I call the 5 marks of manhood. And these are things that are not kind of your stereotypical list of biblical virtues of what it looks like to be a man. Because I think one of the problems that the church has had when it comes to defining masculinity is that we kind of put the cart before the horse. We try to talk about, and I say we, I think the church and the Christian culture tends to try to talk about what it means to be a good man before we actually talk about what it means to be a man. Right. So we tend to define masculinity around the godly and biblical version that we think we're supposed to see in Jesus or in the models of the New Testament. There's nothing wrong with that. Certainly, those things are definitely good to talk about. But I think the cultural itch at the moment, right? The questions that we're really asking are more aligned around the idea of just what is manhood? Like, apart from being a biblical man, what does it mean to be a man? So these five marks of manhood are really kind of basic like that, and I'll just name them for you. It's strength, courage, skill, honor, and allegiance. Really simple concepts, really baseline kinds of things, and honestly, I think that's kind of the way that it should be, right? I mean, for most of history, 50% of the world's population has achieved manhood without a whole lot of problems. It's really kind of only in our current era that we're having such an issue with it. And so I think it should be something fairly simple, something fairly attainable, but also something, what I like about this list is that these are things that you can grow in. So, wherever you're kind of at on the spectrum of feeling like a man, these five marks are things that you can get better at just through practice and through challenging yourself and through having other guys in your life that are helping you get better at those things. So that's kind of the first one is just, hey, we need a clear vision of what it looks like to be a man. And we need a group of men around us who are calling us to that. So that's really kind of where the tribe part comes in, is to say we don't just need an accepted and shared definition. We need men who are actually pushing us towards being like that. And so we need to be living those kinds of things out. So in a tribe context, just to give you a little of the nitty gritty, one of the things that we do in the tribe world is that we have each month we do what we call manhood challenges, and so we come up with some things that we each need to do within the context of a tribe to be able to push ourselves in one of those five marks of manhood. So my tribe, actually, we're getting ready this next week to do a manhood challenge night, and what that looks like for us is that we basically just we get together, we go around the table, and we say, what's one of these five marks that you feel like you need to work on? Like, where do you see a place in your life that you could benefit from, gaining some skill or pushing yourself in the area of courage? Or, what's going on with you in terms of your allegiance? Allegiance is about authority figures. It's also about your relationship to God. Where are you not the man that you want to be in one of these areas? And so how do you need to develop a challenge for yourself around that area to be able to kind of push you? And then who can partner with you in that? Who's another guy in the tribe who can help you along the way in terms of accomplishing that challenge, meeting that goal, whatever that looks like. So we try to do these every month, and sometimes they last a month, sometimes they last 3 months, so, sometimes they're longer, but we try to come up with things that are accomplishable, but also are really going to push us to become better at men. So I know I went a little long-winded on that one, but that's probably the most important of the three pillars is just, yeah, we need to start from a place of let's make sure that we understand what it means to be a man and that we're all moving towards that together.
No, I understand. That's great. Come up with the definition first, because I think you're right. The definition of what is a man is so subjective, unfortunately, and has been for a lot of years now. That I think it gets lost in the wash a lot.
Yeah.
So, great place
Yeah.
to start. Love the concept. The book, How to Be a Man.
Yep.
Now, I mean, that sounds like the most basic title on the face of the earth, right? How
Good. That's the
to
way it should
be a
sound.
man, right?
Yeah.
So, is this an instructional manual? Is this a motivational book? Are there actionable steps? Tell us about what
Yeah.
the actual book is, where that came from, and the
Yeah.
whole bit.
It's a little bit all of the above.
Okay.
So I wanted it to be, to be honest, I started out saying I want it to be something that men are actually going to read. So the first thing you need to know about it is that it's short. It's just
First
100
hurdle right
pages.
there.
Yeah, it's just 100 pages. You can read it in a couple hours. You can put it on the back of the toilet and read a chapter, in 10 minutes every day and be done in a week. So, it's not that hard. It's not hard to digest, and I think you'll enjoy it. But it is both story driven and practical application. So it is some of my personal story. I also write a little bit of story into it. I try to use some kind of like parable style storytelling as a way to be able to illustrate what being a man kind of looks like. And then, yeah, at the end of each chapter, the first half of the book actually is what we just talked about in terms of manhood. So there's a chapter on each of those five marks. And at the end of each chapter, there's a manhood challenge. So there's something to do to be able to practice or to grow in strength or in honor or in, all of those things. So yeah, it is very easy and accessible, and it should just be fun. Like it's something that's meant to celebrate being a man, and that men would actually enjoy reading because it kind of feels like you're in the midst of a conversation with your buddies, and that's what's great about it.
Sure. Okay, I love that. So basically, get back to the tribe concept.
Yeah,
I think we're going to come and go through this a little bit
it's
tonight,
great. Yeah, it's
as
all
we're having
related, so
this.
that's perfect.
Exactly. So, when you're dealing with the tribe concept, it sounds like, because one of the things you say is, why does every man need a tribe and how to start one? It sounds
Yeah,
like this book almost is how do you start your own tribe? Is
yeah.
this something where you can use it to sort of run the meeting, get guys together, that sort of thing?
It's probably not quite that, but I would say it's definitely the entry point. It'll give you a good idea of what is needed in masculine community and a
Hmm.
little bit of what the roadmap is. But I think honestly, to do this well, needs a little more training and a little more initiative. I actually have a program to help guys be able to build your own tribe. So that's one of the things that I do
Oh,
digitally is I help coach guys who want to start a tribe, or who maybe have a men's group right now that's just not as good as they would like it to be and want to try to level it up in some ways. So that's a great kind of opportunity for men who are in that place. But yeah, it gives you an idea of what is involved in a tribe, what a tribe looks like. But I think the challenge there is that we men who have been around, especially the church world for a while, are so used to a certain type of group model that really is not at all based around the way that men connect and grow. That when you try to tell a guy like, "Hey, I want you to do something different in this group context, and here's some ideas, go run with it," it just gets lost. It's really hard for most men to try to figure that out, to connect the dots there. And so that's what I've just kind of seen over time working with men is that because this is so foreign to us in the church right now, we need a little bit of hand holding. And that's okay. It just means we're out of practice. It's not bad to be out of practice, but it does mean when you're out of practice that you usually need a coach, right? You need somebody who is familiar with some of these kinds of things and can help you. So let me give you an example. One of the things that I like to talk to guys about, and to church leaders in particular, is that, hey, when you look at the groups in your church, what's the ratio of active women's groups to active men's groups in your church? It's like usually when I ask that question, I just get laughed at. It's like it's just a
right.
joke. It's at least 2 to 1. Almost everywhere
At
that I talk
least.
to. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I just ask them like, why do you think that is? Like, what's that about? And most ministry leaders, most pastors have a really hard time coming up with an answer to that question. They just get a little stumped. We don't really know why it works so well for women, and even tends to work better for couples or mixed groups, but doesn't work well for men. And so I try to explain, well, here's what's going on. Your group model is built on the felt needs and the ways that women connect. And that's not a bad thing. Women connect in a certain way, and God has built them a certain way. He's wired them a certain way. And so building a group model around those things is great for women. But men connect differently than women do. We're built differently. God designed us differently. And so if you're going to stick us into, especially in an all male environment, into a group that is built around the ways that women connect, why would you be surprised that that doesn't work? Right. So women are really built for some things like social interaction. Women enjoy getting together just for the sake of getting together. Men aren't really wired that way. Men get together usually for action and activity. We like there to be something to do, right? We're not just getting together for the sake of getting together. Now,
Right.
occasionally that does happen as you get closer friends, right? You will just, men do get together just to be together with their close friends. But in general, they don't get together with a group of people they don't know as well unless there's an event or an activity that, it's built around. So, those kinds of things are different. Women are also different in the way that they tend to enjoy studying and learning and reading as a part of the way that they interact together. They feel like they've accomplished something if they have learned something. Men are not quite wired the same way. We feel like we've accomplished something if we've been challenged and we can see that there's going to be actual results in our life from that challenge. We need something to bank on, right? We need evidence that this is actually going to bring
Oh yeah.
value to our life. Otherwise, we're not going to show up. And most of our church small groups are built around either some kind of Bible study or video based curriculum. It's very learning focused, very information focused. Guys can do that, but most men aren't drawn to that. That doesn't feel like we've accomplished something, and it doesn't necessarily feel like we've added value to our lives enough so that we're like, yeah, I want more of that. So you begin to see kind of all of these, ways that men and women are different, and then it's no real surprise that like, okay, we need to build a men's group that's built around those kinds of things. So that's actually kind of the second pillar of what tribe is all about, is this idea of what I call camaraderie. I mean, that word gets thrown around a lot, but it has different meanings in different contexts. I know you've got veterans in your audience, and I think the camaraderie word is really significant to the military community, which is great. I think it's sad that it's not significant to men in general, because I think this is a part of the way that God has designed men to connect, is just this whole concept of camaraderie. And camaraderie is really just about building relationship through shared experience and trust. So it takes both of those things, shared experience and trust. And usually trust comes over time with shared experience, right? We got to get to know each other. We just have to spend time together doing things. We got to create memories together. We got to, go through things together so that we have some shared life. And that helps us to be able to build that kind of camaraderie with each other. If men can do those things, then significant stuff starts to happen in a group. But when was the last time that your average men's small group did something outside of reading and studying the Bible together that actually created a memory and some fun that your group really like looked forward to? This is what I love about this group, that we do these kinds of things on a regular basis. There's occasional groups that do that, but most of them don't. Most of them, that's not anywhere on the agenda at all. And so that's where I say, like, and I talk about this in the book. Adventure needs to be a big part of what a men's group, what a tribe looks like. You've got to have regular adventure for your men. And we also talk about, I call the concept getting naked. And it doesn't literally mean getting naked, but it does mean
Okay.
that you've got to get to a place where you're trusting the guys around you well enough that you can drop the guards. You have got to be able to be willing to expose yourself, vulnerably, in terms of telling your story, showing who you are, what are the things that have shaped you as a man. But that doesn't just happen right away. That comes over time through shared experience, like I talked about, through being able to get to a place of saying, I know these men, and even though I've got some hard things to share, I can trust them with what I have to talk about. So that's kind of what all camaraderie looks like, and I think is a big component that's missing from most men's groups.
Interesting. Now, it sounds to me like you're talking almost a little more specifically about in-person men's groups.
Yeah,
Is that what we're
absolutely.
talking about then? So is it any of this an online movement, or is this really specifically in-person stuff?
Yeah, so it's online in the sense that I help lead and coach men who are leading men in their local context. So I do all my stuff digitally, but I'm doing it in a way to prepare you to be able to do it locally. I really do value, and I think the real way that men need to be able to build community is locally and in person. There's a place for some digital community in our world today, but the real kind of tribe camaraderie that is needed for men only happens in a local context. And I'm just, as a former pastor, I'm just a big proponent of being involved and connected with your local church. I think men's community needs to thrive and be a part of the local church community. And so I encourage guys that are a part of a group, make sure your group is connected to a church, or at least that the guys in your group are all connected to a church. And maybe it's not the same church, but you need to be involved in a local church community, and there needs to be a place for this kind of men's community within a local church.
Interesting. Okay. So everything that you do has a faith component to it then.
I would say most everything does. I do a few things that are kind of, I would say, we'll call it faith adjacent, right? They're kind of like on the edge,
Okay.
which is really just there needs to be some places where guys who have questions about the faith, or who, are asking some of the same kinds of questions about what it means to be a man, but maybe haven't knocked on the door of faith yet, still want to get those questions answered. And I think that's a way that we can be a light to those men and invite them into our space. And yeah, they might might find their faith through the journey of masculinity, and I think that's a really good thing. But we need to create space for them to be able to do that.
Right, right. I appreciate the clarification, and that's awesome. I could not agree with you more. You
Yeah.
kind of have to meet everybody where they are and then open the door,
Right.
for them.
Yeah,
Invite them
exactly.
in, but you can't kick them in, force
Yeah.
them to go through. So it's I love that. Now I know you're getting to it. So, if I'm jumping ahead, stop me. But your third pillar here is freedom.
Freedom.
And
Yeah.
I mean, that
This one's
means
the
a
most
lot
fun.
of
Yeah.
things to a lot of people. So I
Yeah.
can't wait to hear what it means to you.
Yeah, so freedom, and as you alluded to, what I do is based in faith. It's based in a relationship with Jesus,
Yeah.
and so I really say that freedom is the pillar where we get to the place of becoming the men that God has made us to be. And so I talk about it in terms of freedom because I want to say, where are the places in a man's life that he is being held back from being the man that God has called and created him to be? And those are the places where a man needs freedom. Some of them might be obvious, like if you're dealing with some kind of addiction, whether that's porn or alcohol or sports betting, which is, I think, one of the biggest growing addictions in our world of men these days. That's just not getting talked about very much.
Right.
But there's all kinds of vices like that. But it might not just be vices that you need freedom from. It may also be. I had a conversation with a man recently who was just saying, hey, I just kind of feel like I'm the nice guy. Like when I go to work and my boss asks me to do something that I know is not really my job and I'm not comfortable doing it, I still end up saying yes. I don't stand up to my boss because I feel like I might put my job at risk, or I just don't want to be seen as the guy who combats that in any way, is divisive or aggressive in the workplace setting. He said, but I don't like that I'm that way. Like I feel like I'm getting run over. I feel like I'm having to say yes to things that I don't want to say yes to, but I lack the confidence and the courage to be able to do that. Okay, so there's an example of a man who isn't really necessarily wrestling with sin, but he is lacking in freedom. He does not have the freedom to actually stand up for himself and to be the man that God has called him to be. And so we talk about those kinds of things. How do you need to be able to experience that freedom? So in our tribe setting, the way that we go about that is through a model that we use called chiseling. And chiseling is probably my favorite thing about Tribe. It is a process that we go through, and chisel is an acronym. So if you walk it through, it's a process of being able to engage with a man around a very specific topic in his life and how God is at work there. And the acronym just stands for choose, identify, share, explore, and listen. And I know I ran through that quickly, but just explaining it briefly, it's basically just the process of choosing a man that we need to kind of engage with, letting him identify a place where he's in need of freedom, having him share real deeply about all of that, then having the tribe explore that area with him, asking a lot of questions, trying to get a really clear picture of what's going on. And then the last part is probably the most significant part, which is where we listen. And this is how tribe, I think, is really different than most men's groups, is because we end with not with giving advice, but with listening to Jesus. So, men, we are hardwired for fixing, right? That is what we like. We love to do. We love to be able to see a problem in front of us and figure out how to solve it. And that's true even in the way that we relate to people. We try to see the problems in each other's lives and even in our own, and just figure out what do we need to do to solve that problem? How do we fix it? But when it comes to like the deep things of our lives, we're actually really terrible at fixing those problems, which is, we give quick fixes and easy advice. And I like to say, look, if a guy could have solved his problems with quick fixes and easy advice, he would have already done it. He would not be coming to the tribe asking for help. It's the way that we're wired. So
Fair.
why do we keep going back to that model? We need to move away from advice giving and quick fixes. So instead, what we do to kind of short circuit that natural tendency of men to just kind of try to fix things is we just listen. We take time to kind of practice the spiritual discipline of listening to God. And so we kind of have a prayer method where we just spend time in quiet and we try to listen to, okay, Jesus, here's the picture that we think you are showing us about this man and where he is in need of freedom, and what are all the things that we have kind of uncovered that are in the way of that freedom. And would you tell us what it is that he needs? And we're going to try to speak those things to him as we're hearing from you. Now, we have some ways to be able to do that we try to keep it biblically grounded and, in line with the teachings of Jesus and the instructions of scripture. But we want to be sensitive to the fact that we're in a relationship with the God of the universe, and he longs to speak to us and to help us become more like him as his sons. So we're going to trust him with that. We're going to go there. And so we learn to listen for his voice, and sometimes he speaks with words, sometimes he speaks with images, sometimes he speaks with kind of a prompting or more of just kind of a sense or a thought. And we just try to practice the art of saying, here's what I think I'm hearing God say at the moment. Here's the picture that is developing in my mind as you're saying these things or as we're praying about these things. And we kind of hold it all loosely, knowing like, hey, this is a little bit subjective. Any of us could be wrong at any given moment. But what's cool about it is that when you do it in the context of community, the way that God tends to show up by giving one man one picture over here and another man some words to say over here, and the way that those things begin to overlap and form a more complete picture by doing that in community becomes really, really cool and very powerful. It becomes really transformational in a way that I'll be honest, I've never seen in any other kind of men's group before. It is really the thing that has brought about transformation in my own life, but I think in the men that I've seen in tribes, they would come back to this repeatedly and say, this is what has actually led to freedom and to growth in my life in a way that I've never experienced before. So it's super cool. It's super fun. It's really different. It does take some practice to learn. It's a new discipline for most men, but it's not that hard. It just takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of guidance, and that's what we try to do.
I love that. I love that whole thing about freedom right there. That's it's all encompassing, but it makes total sense. So, that's
Yeah,
great. As I'm listening to this, I agree with you on so many points. I think that we need more men to start their own groups, start their own
yeah,
movements. We can't have
yeah.
too many men's groups. You can't,
Agreed.
and
Agreed.
I mean, even the example about
We definitely don't have enough at the moment. So yeah,
no, not even a little. The joke about, the women's groups versus the men's groups. I mean, it's, we kid it around. It's like at least 2 to 1. Usually it's more like 4 or 5, I think, to 1,
yeah, yeah,
because women love to congregate. But my question, that keeps rolling through my head is, how important do you think it is as someone who does this? This is sort of your niche, which is awesome.
yeah.
Um, how important do you think it is for a man who wants to start his own men's group to have first been part of a men's group, been in a men's group as, a participant before he becomes the leader?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I I think it depends. It's not a simple and a straightforward answer. I would say, is it necessary that he be a part of a men's group before trying to lead one or trying to jump into this kind of tribe model in particular? I would say no. I don't think it's necessary. I think any man who really has a hunger for it and is willing to say, "Hey, all I'm going to do is try to be one step ahead of the guys in my group. And I'm admittedly going to be humble and say, I don't know how to do this perfectly. I don't exactly know the path, but I'm going to try to gather us and we're going to figure it out together." I think that's great. I think an attitude like that is really all that you need. Um, as long as it's in the context of you're using some kind of model that's meant to point you in the right direction, which that's what we do. That's how I've built this, is so that
Sure.
it's meant to kind of have some built-in guardrails that keep you right on the path. And that's why I also encourage guys, like, be part of and be connected to a local church. Like, it's good for you to be in community and accountability with other men and with other spiritual leaders in particular, so that you're able to talk about, hey, this is what's going on in my men's group. And maybe there's something wacky that's starting to go on, and you've got somebody outside the group who can kind of call you on it and say, I don't know about that. Like, that might be worth checking into. So, I don't hear of that regularly happening, but it certainly can. And so there's just room to be able to say, yeah, we do need to kind of keep things in a way that is both accountable, but also like transformational. The goal here really is about transformation. So, do you need to have all that experience on the front end? No, not necessarily. But should you be a guy who's got some if not leadership ability, at least like some hunger for seeing this kind of thing happen. Yeah, I think that's probably what's more needed than anything. And often that shows up in the guys who are already out there trying to do this work and maybe not doing it well yet. But you know, they're putting the effort in. You know, they're trying. Maybe they're leading the men's Bible study because that's what their pastors asked them to do. But they're as frustrated as the guys in their group because nobody shows up regularly except them. And you know, they're just trying to figure out like, why am I still doing? I don't even enjoy this group. Like, why are we still doing this? And you know, that's okay. Like, I totally get that. I think those are guys who are great candidates for being able to kind of jump into this space and say, I really would like to build that kind of life-changing brotherhood that I've been hoping for all along. I just need somebody to show me the way.
Sure. Now, I've heard personally from these guys, I know that you have too, who have actually said, I really want to do this, but, who's going to listen to me? You know what I mean, on
Yeah,
this. And they have a lot of imposter syndrome. I think there's some guys who really want to do this, but maybe don't feel like they're ready.
yeah,
Now, I
yeah,
know that one thing you're offering to all the listeners is a free assessment
yeah,
on how manly are you type of thing.
yeah.
Is this a personal assessment of how manly you are, or is this
It
also
is.
an
Yeah. So
assessment of
it's
are you ready to teach it?
no, it's not really about that. Although
Okay.
it might translate into that if you're interested there. But no, it is. It's just called "How Manly Are You?" It's a quiz for you to be able to take and to kind of assess your own masculinity. You know, manhood. It gets into what we talked about earlier, the 5 marks of manhood. But it's just kind of a fun and an easy way to be able to say what are the places where I'm doing well. What are some places where I could get better, and what are some next steps that I could take to be able to help me there? So it's just easy, you know, and it's fun. It's a, you know, it's the Manhood Tribes equivalent of, you know, which Star Wars character am I? You know, you've taken probably, you know, a dozen and a half of those kinds of quizzes on the internet, and this is my version of that. So, yeah, just you know, have a good time with it. But it is meant to be a good resource. It'll help you identify, like, okay, I'm like. I'm doing fairly well in the skill area, but I need some help with when it comes to courage, you know, and those things are really important for us as men to identify and then to be able to say, I'm actually not going to get any better in that area unless I have some guys around me helping me do that. And that's kind of the impetus for moving towards a tribe.
Nice. I don't know why you'd have to ask that other question about the Star Wars thing. Aren't we all Han Solo? Right.
We all would like to be, right?
Isn't that the answer for everybody?
Yeah, we wish, you know, we wish.
Okay. All right.
I
I
don't know. Some
digress.
days I would rather be Chewbacca, but you know,
You
we'll
know,
we'll
he
take what we can get.
he's worth considering. Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
low stress position, right? Walk
Yeah,
around,
exactly. Yeah.
grunt every once in a while. Pretty cool. All right. All right. So you're offering this as a free thing. And this is available through, I think you told me, howmanlyareyu.com, right? So it's its
Yeah.
own separate place to go.
Not hard to remember. Just yeah, type it in howmanlyareyu.com. You'll find it right there.
Right on. We'll make sure that link is in the show notes, for everybody to go take a look at. Um, Overall, and this was one of the first things we mentioned, but I want to come back to it
Yeah.
because the manhood epidemic is something that we talk about all the time.
Right.
But it means different things to different people. With the manhood epidemic being the way that it is, okay, I'm curious what your take is on, what's the state of it right now in the
Yeah.
world, and what do we do about it?
Yeah. That's a great question. We probably could spend a whole episode just talking about that, right?
I'm sure
So
we could.
let me try to boil it down quickly. I think the state of manhood, masculinity, and kind of our culture's understanding of it is a little more mixed right now than it even was 5 years ago, which actually is a good thing. I would say 5 years ago we were in the like heart of and the height of toxic masculinity, where if you looked for masculinity on the internet, you were going to find toxic masculinity. And if you were trying to find the narrative about masculinity, all you were going to hear was it's toxic, it's all bad, it needs to be thrown out. I think we have kind of been able to say that's extreme, right? And I don't think anybody really does want that. But because that narrative was so popular and so strong in the culture, it's still hanging on in places. It's not hanging on everywhere. And I think the rise of some internet voices, you look at guys like Joe Rogan, who's shifting in some ways, and even in his cultural narrative, but also guys like Chris Williamson, who have these just massive platforms, and they're talking to men and especially younger men in ways that are saying, "Hey, it's actually good to be a man. And there are some good ways to be a man. These are things that are worth valuing and celebrating. And so that's okay. So I'm happy to say that I think there are some things moving in good directions, but it's not like we're as a culture, the whole narrative has really shifted yet, and the whole culture is moving in a good direction. I mean, if you just look at the statistics about men in our culture, we are behind women in every good category and ahead of them in every bad category, right? So it's like the picture is bleak. It is not good. I think one of the statistics that I hear quoted the most often that's really helpful is that the gender gap in terms of women versus men going to college and getting 4-year degrees now is as big as it was when Title IX was passed back in the 70s, I believe is when it was passed. But it's flipped in the opposite direction now. So where Title IX was passed because of the gender gap, but the gender gap favored men at that point. We are
Right.
now on the opposite end of that spectrum. There are far more women going to college and getting 4-year degrees than there are men. But nobody's talking about that as a social injustice, at least not at a large picture level, the way that they were about women. So
Right.
there are real things that need to be done at a cultural level to help address some stuff when it comes to masculinity. All of that is going to take time. I see signs of things like that happening, but it is going to take time. I think within the Christian world, we've got some catching up to do. And I think the biggest, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I think the biggest way that we need to catch up is that we spend a lot of time talking about biblical masculinity. And in particular, that tends to focus on being a good husband and being a good father. Those are not bad things to talk about, right? That's definitely a picture of what, especially in the New Testament, gets talked about a lot when it comes to being a man. But the cultural question marks are really more around what does being a man actually look like? And in the culture today, there's a lot of guys who aren't husbands and aren't fathers, and they're asking those kinds of questions about manhood, and the church isn't really trying to answer them at all. And so we need to step up our game in terms of addressing what does just baseline manhood look like, and how do we call our men to that, and then teach them, okay, as men, now that we've kind of checked that box a little bit, as men, how do we do that the way that the scriptures teach us to do that? How do we follow Jesus's lead in being a man? So I think that's where we need to kind of play some catch up and just make sure that the culture doesn't outpace us there. The culture will also try to define what being a man looks like, and if we don't do a good job of stepping into that space, our men, and especially our young men, will find definitions that don't help them move towards Jesus. And so we need to be involved in that discussion.
Yeah, very well said. And I'm glad that you brought in the church aspect of this too, because
Yeah,
something that I've heard before and that I've kind of seen with my own eyes in several instances is that the church almost tends to steer away from this. It's almost like they're a little afraid of the toxic
yeah,
masculinity label themselves. And yet you have the Bible, which sort of governs, what they do and what they talk about, which
yeah,
does have, I mean, all sorts of examples and outlines of, you know, strong men in it, and how to follow and how to lead, how to become. And you're right, it's not just fathers and husbands, but
yeah,
I guess if you're wanting to do, this sort of a men's group and you're wanting to get this thing going and you want to do it through your church because you want to bring Christian men, to a better place for all of them.
yeah.
How can you kind of get over that, within the church? Do you do it within the church? Do you just go and do it on your own? What sort of advice do you have for guys who maybe at that point where they're trying to decide how exactly do I start this,
Yeah.
and do I involve them? Do I do it my own? What do you think?
Yeah. I think if you're a guy who's, let's say listening to this conversation that we're having and you're thinking, gosh, I would love to be a part of a group that sounds like that, that looks like what we're talking about. I think one of the benefits of churches today, and especially when it comes to men, is that churches have tried so many things with men that have not worked at all. They're kind of just not trying much these days. So it's like there's a little bit of we've thrown our
Yeah.
hands up in the air and surrendered, right? So because of that, there's actually a lot more freedom, I think, to try things within the local church context than there used to be. Now, that's not going to be true everywhere. You may be in a church that, has a very strict model of this is how we do groups and nobody gets to do it any other way than how we do it. And if that's the case, like you may have to make some hard choices there to figure out how to pursue Jesus in the way that works for you. And it may run contrary to your church. I realize that's a difficult circumstance. But I think in most circumstances, I think just what you do is you say, hey, I'm interested in doing this, and I'd like to find some other guys around me who would be interested in doing it as well. And, maybe it's worth a conversation with your small groups pastor or your, executive pastor, adult ministry, whoever at your church kind of oversees what this would fall under, and just say, "Hey, I think I'm going to check this out. I want to lead a group of guys that is going to do this." And you're not even necessarily asking for permission. You're kind of just like saying, "This is what I want to do," and involving and informing your church leadership and saying, "I'm going to walk down this pathway. Would you just be aware of what I'm doing and hold me accountable if needed?" But also like bless the work that we're doing and trying to reach and connect men closer to Jesus. This is a really good thing. People should support it. And then just go for it. Just go for it. Don't be afraid as a man to step out and just try. I think most men, I think what holds men back from doing this is kind of what you mentioned earlier, is not so much that there's not permission to do it, it's that we disqualify ourselves before we even get started. We say, I'm not the guy to be able to do this. I'm not qualified for this. I'm not spiritually mature enough. I'm not biblically intelligent enough. I don't know all the answers to all the questions. I'm not the right guy. Or it's the like, I don't have time for that. Like, hey,
Hmm.
if somebody
Yeah.
asked me to be in a group like that, I would probably join up. But here's the hard reality, guys. Like, there aren't just groups like this out there. There aren't these kinds of opportunities to be a part of. So if you want an opportunity like this, you're going to have to start it. You're going to have to be the man that creates it. And my job is really just to kind of come alongside you and say, it's easier than you think it is. Like I can help you be able to do that without as much work or difficulty as you think it might take. And I'll just show you how. I'll show you how to be able to do that and accomplish it, whether that's in your local church context or not. We'll figure out the best way for you to be able to do that.
I'm glad you ended that way because my understanding is this is where your coaching comes in.
That's right. Yeah, so
Okay.
so I like I talked about earlier, I run a program called Build Your Own Tribe, and so I work with guys who want to start up their tribe. So I'm not like working, if your tribe is a group of 6 or 8 guys, I'm not working with all 6 or 8 of them. I'm working with you who's leading it, and I'm teaching you how to be able to pull those guys together. I'm gonna walk you through kind of the initial like 12-week phase of how to get your tribe up and off the ground. I'm gonna give you and equip you with the tools to be able to keep it running after that, and I'm gonna release you and say, hey, go and do like go and lead, be the chief of your tribe, and watch great things happen as you together follow Jesus. I think that's the biblical model of how anything has ever gotten started within the Christian world, and so we're going to try to follow that. But yeah, so that's what I do. Any guy who's interested in starting up a group, I just say, hey, you can go on my website manhoodtribes.com. You can schedule a call with me. I'll talk to you directly, and we'll talk about like, hey, is this the right next step for you? Would it be a good fit for your current context? Do you have some guys around you to be able to start something like this with? If not, how would I help you find them? But yeah, we just try to figure out, hey, is this the right thing? And if so, then we start a coaching relationship where I work with you to be able to get that done.
Perfect. All right, I love that. All right, so as we kind of start wrapping this up here, I do have one more question for you, of course, where we
Yeah,
want to wrap things up. But let's get all that contact information out to everybody because I don't want to forget that. So, how
yeah.
does everybody reach Don? How do they follow Don? Website, socials. Give everybody give them what you got, man.
Yeah, you can find Manhood Tribes pretty much, anywhere on the internet, manhoodtribes.com, all the socials, in particular YouTube. I do a weekly kind of podcast video show on YouTube that's called Manhood Tribes. So, we're not hard to find. But the best way to get started with anything Manhood Tribes is actually that quiz that we talked about earlier. Just go to howmanlyareYou.com. You can download the quiz for free right there. Take that. That will also get you on our email list. And so that will keep you up to date with all the things that we have going on and how to get involved or get connected with other stuff that's happening as well.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, brother. I appreciate everything you brought here, and I love how passionate you are about this, man. I mean,
Thanks.
your energy level has not dropped an ounce since we
Oh, well,
started
that's good
this,
to hear. Yeah.
and you're not drinking coffee. So
It's late for me here on the East Coast too, so I'm tired. But yeah, I get in front of a microphone and I'm ready to go, man. So that's great.
you are just jazzed. I love it, man. I really do. I appreciate you bringing that energy and that spirit to the show, like that. So,
Yeah, well, thanks.
but as we wrap it up, I want to make sure that we've covered everything for you. So let me just kind of ask you in this final question: is there anything that I didn't ask you? Is there anything that we talked about? Maybe you want to go back and double down on, or maybe there's a nugget or maybe a leave behind, some sort of advice that you want to give to our 90% men listenership out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the floor for the last minute or two. Go ahead and wrap us up, brother.
Yeah. If there's anything that I would double down on, it would be this idea of guys, if this is the kind of community that you want, and I would take an easy bet on this because I think this is the kind of community that all men want. If this is what you want and what you're hoping for, I just want to encourage you and remind you that it's not going to fall in your lap. It's not going to come looking for you. It's not going to find you. You're going to have to build it. That is the unfortunate state of our culture and our world today, is that this kind of masculine community just does not largely exist. And you can be the man who can create it. It's not as hard to do as you might think it is. It's not as time consuming as you might think it is, but it can be as life-changing and as rich and as rewarding and as fun as you imagine it to be. And that's what a men's group really should look like. And that's what I want to help teach guys how to be able to do. So if you hear that and you go, yes, that's what I want, but I'm just not sure if I can get over XYZ hurdle or hump. Let's talk about the hurdles and the humps. I'm happy to talk about those and to help you figure out, what actually is in the way of you being able to pursue having this kind of life-changing brotherhood that you've always wanted. So, come check us out, manhoodtribes.com. I'd love to help you if I can.
Love it. Great wrap up. I know you were going to take care of this all on your own, so I appreciate you doing that. This was one of those, I'm going to let him have the floor and get out of the way. So I love it, man. Really and
Great,
truly.
thanks.
Founder of Manhood Tribes, author of How to Be a Man, Don Ross. I appreciate you coming on. Just huge today. Honestly, it's been great getting to know you, and I know there's a lot of guys out there who are thinking about this sort of thing. So appreciate
Yeah.
you, giving them options and giving them a path forward. Thanks for being on the show, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a real treat for me, Rory. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Folks, this has been another just incredible episode of the Power of Man podcast. And the reason that we have such powerful guests like this, such powerful men who come on here with these powerful messages, is because we are absolutely united in you finding your power so that you can be a better provider, a better protector, a better leader tomorrow than you are today, so that you can be a better father, a better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you is because you matter. It's because you have value. And folks, at some point, you really and truly just have to believe it. Until next time.